The wind was brisk that afternoon in Manhattan, rustling the early autumn leaves along Fifth Avenue as Natalie Carter stepped out of her town car. She gave the driver a gentle nod and declined his offer to accompany her. She didn't like making scenes or drawing attention to herself, and certainly not when she was simply browsing. She wasn't wearing heels, no statement jewelry, and definitely no designer handbag slung over her shoulder. A plain black tote and a modest wool coat shielded her from the chill. To the average passerby, she looked like a schoolteacher on her lunch break or perhaps an assistant running errands for her boss. No one who looked at her saw a billionaire's wife. No one knew she'd just stepped away from a penthouse overlooking Central Park or that her husband, Lucas Carter, was currently in talks to buy out two of the tallest buildings in Midtown. She liked it that way. She always had. The boutique she walked into was Diamante Luxe, one of Manhattan's most exclusive jewelry salons. Its crystal-clear windows displayed shimmering necklaces, engagement rings the size of dimes, and velvet trays draped in rare gems. Natalie had passed by this store several times before, usually in a rush or en route to some gala or charity function. But today, she had time. She wasn't on anyone's clock. She had spotted a bracelet in the window, an elegant piece, vintage in style, with a quiet grace that reminded her of something her grandmother used to wear. That's all she wanted to do, take a closer look. Maybe even try it on. Inside the store, the air was thick with scent, something between vanilla and money, and classical music floated from discreet speakers. The lighting was warm, bouncing off the gold trim and crystal counters. Two saleswomen stood near the entrance, both tall, both impeccably dressed in fitted black suits and glossy red lips. They didn't greet her. Natalie walked slowly, scanning the cases. She spotted the bracelet immediately. The emerald stones glinted faintly beneath the glass like tiny stars trapped in ice. She stepped closer. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Could I take a look at this one?" The saleswoman closest to her, a woman in her early 40s with a sharp chin and tighter smile, didn't move. She blinked at Natalie, then glanced at her colleague as if silently confirming some unspoken judgment. "That piece is part of our antique private collection," the woman said coolly. "It's $850,000. Natalie nodded. "Yes, it's stunning. I'd love to see it, if possible." The woman didn't move. Her expression remained neutral, but there was a flicker of something unpleasant beneath her eyes. The other associate, younger and equally composed, stepped forward slightly with a smirk. "We usually show those pieces by appointment. For security reasons." "I understand," Natalie said. "I can wait or make an appointment if needed." The older one finally stepped forward, but not toward the counter. "Are you looking for something more in the gift range? We have beautiful pendants and charms under $10,000 on the second floor." Natalie tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "I'm actually interested in this bracelet. It's a very special piece," the younger one said, her tone sweet but condescending. "A few celebrities have looked at it this month. We can't just let anyone handle it." Natalie inhaled through her nose, slow and calm. "I'm not just anyone." "I'm sure you're not," the older woman said. "But as you can imagine, we have to be cautious with rare inventory. And we typically require verification before we allow clients to hold pieces in that price range." From the corner of her eye, Natalie noticed a couple, well-dressed, the woman in heels and a trench with a Hermes scarf, being shown a tray of diamond earrings by a different associate. They were both laughing. Champagne glasses sat beside them. The woman wore no more jewelry than Natalie did. Natalie turned her attention back to the bracelet. "I appreciate your concerns," she said politely. "But I'm a potential customer just like anyone else in here." The younger associate laughed lightly, covering her mouth. "Of course. We don't mean to offend. It's just, we don't see many walk-ins asking about seven-figure items." There it was. The insinuation Natalie had endured before, dressed down or not. The quiet dismissal that came from people who only measured worth by designer labels and Instagram clout. She could have said something right then, could have pulled out her black Amex or casually mentioned her last purchase from Cartier. She could have name-dropped her husband, who had been on the cover of Forbes 3 times in the last 2 years. But she didn't. She simply smiled. "You're right. I probably don't belong here." And with that, she turned and began walking toward the door. The saleswomen exchanged satisfied glances, thinking they'd handled the situation delicately enough to avoid complaint but firmly enough to protect their brand. Neither noticed the way Natalie pulled out her phone once she stepped onto the sidewalk. Lucas answered after one ring. "Hey," he said warmly. "Everything okay? I just had a funny experience at a jewelry store," she replied calmly. "You know the one on 5th, Diamante Luxe." There was a pause. "I know it," he said. "Why? What happened?" "They didn't want to show me a bracelet. Thought I was in the wrong place. Suggested I try a cheaper section upstairs." Another pause. Then a shift in his voice, calm, but no longer warm. "Stay where you are. I'm fine," she said with a light laugh. "It's not new. Just surprising. Thought you'd want to know. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She didn't argue. She knew when Lucas used that tone, the matter was settled. She leaned against the glass of a closed boutique next door, watching the late afternoon sun touch the tips of the buildings. She wasn't angry, she rarely got angry anymore. Years of being underestimated and quietly written off had thickened her skin. She wasn't surprised, but she was tired. Inside the store, the associates resumed their banter. A few other customers had come in. Champagne continued to pour. Everything seemed normal, until the black SUV pulled up. The man who stepped out was unmistakable. Even dressed in a simple suit, Lucas Carter carried the kind of presence that parted rooms. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the calm, dangerous confidence of someone who knew his influence. His assistant trailed behind him, as did two lawyers. When he stepped into the boutique, a hush fell like glass breaking. Lucas didn't wait for anyone to greet him. "Which one of you is Vanessa?" he asked. The older associate raised her hand slowly, confused. "Did you refuse to assist a woman who asked to see your bracelet display?" She blinked. "Sir, we didn't refuse, we simply explained our policies." He cut her off with a single look. "That woman is my wife." Gasps rippled through the store. The couple that had been sipping champagne put their glasses down. "We weren't informed of her identity," the younger one said quickly. "She came in without. She didn't need to come in with anything but respect," Lucas said. "Which you failed to offer." Mr. Carter, the store manager, who had emerged from a back office, said nervously, "If there's been some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Lucas said, his voice low but sharp. "This location is now under review. I'll be speaking with your corporate owners within the hour. And until I'm satisfied, I suggest you reconsider how you interact with every woman who walks through these doors, regardless of what she's wearing." Vanessa stood frozen, her mouth slightly open. Natalie stepped back into the store then, calm as ever, her eyes meeting her husband's. "I still think the bracelet was lovely," she said gently. Lucas turned to the manager. "We'll take it. Full price. And please box it carefully. For my wife." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. But the effect was seismic. Everyone in the store could feel the tension shift like a storm rolling in. As they left, the whispers began. "Is that her? That was Natalie Carter. I can't believe they didn't recognize her." The two associates stood behind the counter, pale and silent. Outside, as the driver opened the door for them, Natalie looked up at Lucas and smiled. "You didn't have to come all the way down here," she said. He kissed her forehead. "No one treats you like that. Not on my watch." And as they drove away, neither of them noticed the way employees inside Diamante Luxe started frantically making phone calls, or the way one of the assistants burst into tears. What they knew, what they'd always known, was that true class had nothing to do with appearance or price tags. It came from how you treated people when you thought no one important was watching. And today, someone very important had been watching after all. The doors of Diamante Luxe didn't just open that afternoon, they swung open with purpose. The sound was enough to startle even the background music, like a record needle scratched off an old vinyl. Every head in the boutique turned sharply. Sales associates froze mid-sentence, customers paused mid-sip of sparkling water, and the air inside the luxury store thickened with tension. It wasn't often that someone walked in with such energy, controlled, precise, yet unmistakably dominant. Lucas Carter stepped inside, flanked by two of his most trusted corporate attorneys and his executive assistant, Jeremy, who carried a leather briefcase. Lucas wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. His very presence demanded attention. 6 feet 2 inches tall, with sharp features and a navy blue wool coat tailored perfectly over a charcoal suit. Lucas looked like someone who could buy the entire building, and that was exactly what he intended to do. He didn't glance at the cases. He didn't admire the velvet trays lined with diamonds or the custom engagement rings that sparkled under recessed lighting. His gaze went directly to the sales counter, specifically to the 2 women who had insulted his wife. Vanessa, the older of the 2 associates, was in the middle of speaking with a customer when she looked up and saw him. Her words caught in her throat. The blood drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Marissa, her younger colleague, noticed her expression and turned slowly. She, too, froze. Lucas's voice was calm, even gentle, but it sliced through the silence like a blade. Which one of you refused to help my wife? Nobody moved. Jeremy stepped forward. You have 30 seconds to answer before we escalate this to your regional director. Vanessa blinked quickly, her voice quivering. I was the one who spoke to her first, but sir, we didn't know who she was. If we had known. Lucas raised his hand slightly, silencing her. So you admit that you judged her. We just thought she might have been lost, Marissa piped in, her voice cracking under pressure. We didn't say anything rude. We were just trying to protect the merchandise. Did she ask to see something specific? Lucas asked. Vanessa nodded slowly. Yes, a bracelet from our antique emerald line. Did she raise her voice? Touch anything without permission? Threaten anyone? No, sir. She was very quiet. So your reason for denying her service was entirely based on how she looked. Vanessa swallowed. We thought she couldn't afford it. That's all. The silence that followed was louder than shouting. It echoed through every polished corner of the store. Customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. A couple near the engagement ring section slowly backed away, whispering to each other. The manager, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and a forced smile, appeared from the back, trying to take control. Mr. Carter, he said smoothly, I can assure you, this isn't a reflection of our values. We pride ourselves on excellent service. Lucas turned his head slowly, eyes narrowed. Stop. I've heard that script before. What you pride yourselves on is profiling. And today, you profiled the wrong woman. Mr. Carter, if you'll allow us to make this right. You can't make it right, Lucas said coldly. But you can start by shutting up and listening. Natalie entered the store a moment later, just as poised as ever. Her expression was unreadable, neither angry nor smug. Just quiet, observing. She stood by the entrance, coat folded over her arm, her black tote still slung over her shoulder. She didn't rush to her husband's side. She didn't need to. Her presence alone now changed the entire dynamic in the room. Lucas's voice remained low and deliberate, addressing both sales associates again. You see, when you look at someone and assume they don't belong, you're not just making a mistake, you're making a statement about what kind of person you are. You didn't see a customer. You saw someone you didn't want to serve. That tells me everything I need to know about this business. The manager stepped in again. Please, Mr. Carter, I'd like to offer a formal apology on behalf of our staff. This is clearly a misunderstanding. Lucas stepped forward, now just feet from Vanessa and Marissa. You know what's not a misunderstanding? He asked. I own the real estate this store is built on. The lease you operate under. It's mine. So here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, this store is under internal audit. No sales, no consultations, no service, until further notice. The manager's face turned red. Mr. Carter, you don't have that kind of authority without. I have legal authority, Lucas said, motioning to his lawyers. And by the time your corporate chain finishes reviewing the footage of today's interaction, there won't be a Diamante Luxe left on 5th Avenue. Vanessa gasped, clutching the counter. Please, sir, this is my job, my career. You should have thought about that before you decided someone dressed modestly wasn't worth your time. Marissa was visibly trembling now. We didn't mean to cause harm. We were just trying to protect inventory. Inventory. Natalie spoke for the first time, her voice soft but cutting. You're more concerned about gemstones than people. Everyone turned to her. I didn't want to make a scene, she said. I didn't even want special treatment. I just wanted to see a bracelet. Something that reminded me of my grandmother. That's all. But you looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. Lucas walked over to her, gently taking her hand. She belongs wherever she walks, he said firmly. And from now on, she'll walk into a store where she owns every piece in it. The store fell into stunned silence. I'll take that bracelet, Natalie said calmly, but not from you. I want it boxed by someone else. And then I want a receipt sent to our lawyer. Jeremy stepped forward and handed the manager a paper. This is a formal notice of lease review. All operations will be paused pending investigation. Our team will be in contact with your corporate owners within the hour. In the meantime, you may continue to stand here and reflect on how your pride just cost you everything. The manager stammered something unintelligible. No one responded. A new employee, a young man in the back, probably no more than 23, hurried forward. Ma'am, he said nervously to Natalie, I saw what happened. I wasn't part of it. But if you'd still like the bracelet, I can package it for you properly. Natalie smiled at him gently. Thank you. That would be lovely. He nodded, disappearing into the back to retrieve the bracelet with gloves on, while the rest of the staff stood motionless, trapped in their own shame. Minutes later, the young employee returned with a white velvet box and offered it to Natalie with both hands. She took it, thanked him sincerely, and turned back toward her husband. Let's go, she said quietly. Lucas nodded. As they walked out, a reporter standing across the street snapped a photo, then another. The news was already spreading online. By the time they reached the car, Lucas's phone was vibrating non-stop. Messages from partners, headlines, texts from journalists, and one particularly furious email from Diamante Lux's CEO asking for a call. It was too late. Back inside, Vanessa finally sat down on a gold-cushioned chair behind the counter, looking as though her entire world had just collapsed. Marissa leaned on the glass with her head in her hands, trying not to cry. The manager stared blankly at the paper he'd been handed, unable to process what had just happened. In a matter of 30 minutes, their judgment, their snobbery, their arrogance had cost them everything. Not just a sale, but their jobs, their reputation, and the favor of one of the most powerful couples in the country. As Lucas and Natalie's car pulled away from the curb, Natalie looked out the window with a thoughtful expression. Do you think they'll learn anything from this? She asked. Lucas shrugged slightly. Some people learn, some don't. But either way, they won't be doing it again. Natalie looked down at the box on her lap. She opened it slowly and stared at the bracelet. The emeralds shimmered like memories in the sunlight. It's beautiful, she whispered. You are, Lucas replied, watching her. No jewel could ever compare. She smiled softly and closed the box. And somewhere behind them, the name Diamante Lux began its descent into infamy, not because of a scandal, or a financial scandal, or a PR blunder, but because two women decided that kindness wasn't worth the effort. And someone powerful enough to make a change had been watching. And he did.